Hey gang, it is July 5th, 2017, and this is Brooklyn Pony Part 7. And as I've stated in a couple of previous videos, I took a week off to have a vacation with my wife and our dogs, and then of course yesterday was July 4th, so I took that day off. And for those of us that celebrate that in the United States, hope you had a great 4th. For those of you that don't, well, I hope you had a great day. As I've stated in previous videos, I did salvage the this structure, which is a support structure for the the window openings right here, and there should be a B pillar right here, and then this is the back section filler panel between the deck lid and the back of the car, or the convertible top. And I did some repair work on that. There was some minor rust through back here in these corners, in this corner particularly, and I put a doubler patch on the outside, or the inside, however you want to look at it. Here, just a simple patch, nothing major, and then a secondary patch right here. And of course, all the metal, before I did any welding, everything was sandblasted, and then I treated it. Now I know this bottle is hard to read, but this is from a company called Purple Power, and it says de-ruster metal conditioner, and this is what I've used for quite some time, and it does a pretty good job of prepping the metal. Sorry the label's not very good, but I still use it and it works great. And once I did the repair work and treated everything, I sprayed everything with epoxy primer, and then I added a secondary primer on top of that to help seal everything in. In fact, this is the epoxy primer I used, PPG Shopline JP377, and everything got sprayed with that. So I'm happy with the results, and at this point I'm going to plan on installing this part and start putting on the quarter panels. And then this inner structure here, this will go in later, but this is the support structure that attaches to that part, and this area out here attaches to the side panels, and then the convertible top mounts to these 4 locations right here. This area attaches to the wheelhouse, as does this, and this, and then of course this will weld to the trunk floor, this section and this section, and then the forward section will go to the inner panel, or inner part of the floor pan, which is be in this area right here. So if you've seen the previous videos, you know that I've got a bunch of pieces and parts. I've got the B pillars, outer piece and inner piece, and then I've got a support structure here that'll go in this location, and then I've also bought these heavy plate pieces that go on the inside of the wheelhouse, and they help support that big structure that'll go in between here. So if you've seen the previous videos, I did mention that the dash was no good on the original car. I blasted it and it blew holes through it, and I'm not going to use it. So a YouTube subscriber contacted me, and he had basically a spare car, and we worked out a deal, and that's what I have right here. Now this is another 66, and he and his son had bought this car, or he had bought this car for his son, and they were going to do a father-son project on it. And he ran into some problems. Unbeknownst to him, somebody had, I don't want to say worked on it, but somebody had kind of butchered it. This car, you know, they all had the same issues. You got rust in the floor pans, which isn't uncommon at all, so that would be a typical repair. And as he started working on the car and stripping it down, he realized something wasn't right. So I wanted to share this with you because there's some things you can look for, and you know, without knowing the car or knowing what's been done to a car or how they're supposed to look, you may not know what to look for. And you know, again, there's people out there that they will hide work or hide damage, and they don't care. They just want to flip the car, sell it to somebody else, and let them deal with it. So just a few things here. As he started taking his car apart, he realized, well, it has new trunk pans in it. Well, that's great. That pan is it doesn't sound right. Well, there's no welds holding that pan down to the frame. Same way over here. This is a new pan. It's not touching anything either. Well, he started looking at it, and he said some things just didn't, quite look right. You look at this panel. Well, that's a new panel, but there's a flange up here that's not really touching anything, and there's shoddy welds. I mean, this looks like it was just slapped together. And he started really looking at it, and I want to show you this because there's a few other things. This panel is sitting too high. You can put your finger down between where the wheelhouse is, and it's supposed to mate, as you can see on the one I've done back here. It should actually have a little kick out right here, where this wheelhouse meets this pan. Well, it doesn't. So that's kind of a confusing look. This one's similar in how it lines up or doesn't line up. But here's the real thing. Start looking back here, and those shock towers, or the shock openings, are heavily distorted, and you can actually see wrinkles. Look how bad that is. Basically, this car was rear-ended and never fixed, and so this makes me angry. I want to show you what else is going on. I'm going to crawl under this thing. Have a look at that. And this. Nothing is attached. The frame rail is buckled, collapsed on itself, and then look at this. This is pushed in on both sides. I can wrap my hand around that now. Same way over here. Look at that. And it almost looks like somebody tried to put it on a frame machine and pull it a little bit because of this split right here. Same way down here. I know it's hard to see, but this is also pushed in. Let's see if I can get on this side. Yeah. Maybe see that. But the point is, there's some people that just don't care, and they'll butcher a project. Now, I can say maybe they didn't know what they were doing, but in this case, they knew what they were doing because they were trying to hide it. If you look back here at the way this is connected, and this is a new piece too. Look at this connection, welded on the edge. But look, this should line up with this. That's over an inch of distance, and they just tried to. Looks like they just tried to beat the corner of the quarter in. I don't even know how they had that tail panel on there. And these quarters have been replaced too. At some point, I don't know if they were from the accident or not, but this is not the normal, weld pattern. Same way up here. There's an edge where somebody just cut it off and then covered it up. Same way over here. Just a couple really just spot welds. They're not even. It's not even a full weld. So again, I'm sorry for him. He didn't know what he was getting into, but it just makes me angry that people do this to cars, and then they sell it to somebody, and throw a few bucks in their pocket, and not worry about the next guy having problems. So anyway, that's enough of my rant on that one. I'm going to get into starting the assembly on this, and what I want to do, in the previous videos I put all this bracing on here, and this gives me a height for the original panel. The cross bracing keeps everything square, and hopefully everything lines up the way it did in my previous videos. Oh, also here, this is another support brace that I put on to keep this piece from moving in and out, because really the only thing holding them was this flange, or this leg right here. So with that in place and this in place, I think everything should be right where it belongs. But basically, I'm going to put that panel or that assembly back up on the wheel houses, get everything in place, and start doing final fitment, and then work on getting the B pillars in place and various other pieces and parts. So let me get started on that, and stay tuned. Just a point of reference, you can see this, hopefully see there's a slight variation in the shape here. This panel is flat and then it has a slight joggle, and that goes on the outside of the wheelhouse. You can see it there, it kind of has a recess to it. The top part here, the rain gutter, does not actually make contact with the wheelhouse. That'll be adjusted as I get the quarter on, and then as I get the fitment of the bracing here. One thing I wanted to point out, beyond the dash that I'm getting out of that other car, I'm also getting one of these support braces. The one that was on the car was rather thin down here at the bottom, and there was actually some rust through on this. Oh, I can show you. I removed it before I painted it, but you don't see that very often. Rust through on that pocket, and then, like I said, this lower section was kind of thin, and so I elected to not use that one, and I will salvage the one out of this car. It's a lot more solid, so I'll get that out later after I get everything, adjusted in place over here. So I'll continue on with mocking up this and getting the quarters set up in place. Now again, I'm just mocking things in place so that I can get the inner structure set in the right location. I'm not ready to weld the quarters on by any means, but when I do get to that point, what I will do is I will prep them by I'll probably do some small holes on the inside here where it meets the outer rocker panel. I will also have a series of holes that run the edge along the lip of the wheelhouse and the quarter. Of course, I have existing holes up here that'll get welded to, and then on the inside, on this flange, it's hard to see, but there's a flange from the filler panel right there. And of course, everything should line up nice. There's no reason it shouldn't. I've had it on here before, but that's basically what I'm doing. I'm just making sure that things are going to line up, and I will double check my measurements for the location of the quarters to the front rails like I did before on the other video. And again, I'll put the tail panel in, a variety of things, checking for leveling out the filler panel up here. I'll do some adjusting on that, so I already know it's probably going to sit a little bit off. That's pretty close right there. So anyway, that's what I'm doing. Alright, so I have the quarter panels in place, I have everything clamped, and so far everything seems to be fitting very well. I've done some cross measuring from various locations, say this area down to the corner where it would be here, this flange on the inner rocker. Done some cross measuring there, they come out even. I've done some measuring from the midpoint of the wheelhouse, basically underneath that crease, up to the edge here in the same location. Very happy with that. It's within a 1/16. And other than that, I've set the original trunk panel or trunk lid, deck lid, however you want to say it, on the car along with the tail panel. Now everything's lining up really nice with that. The door or the lock is lining up real nice with the center of the gas cap. The overhang, I know it's hard to see with the vice grips, but it's pretty even all the way across. Very happy with that. And what else was there? Oh, I've also taken off the quarter panel extensions from the old car, and this one fits better than the other one. Now you'll see a little bit of an overlap here, but that's because the deck lid is not sitting up as it should be. When it's up nice, it actually aligns very well. Now I did have to manipulate the quarter panel just a little bit because this would wobble on the quarter. And basically it had a high point here, and I hammered it in a little bit to get the shape right. And that's all it took, was that area moving the metal forward just a little bit, and it was able to fit. I'll show you what I'm dealing with on this side. This one is a little bit more challenging. You can maybe see it overhangs slightly if I let me show you from the top. If I make the top fit and it kind of butts into the trunk panel, the trunk lid, then I end up with a gap on this side. If I rotate it to take care of the gap on this side, then I get a gap at the top. Really what that tells me is there's a high point, and it's basically where the corner is. So to fix that, I need to move the corner, this area, forward. Now, I know that sounds a little scary, and it's going to manipulate the metal somewhat, but there's really you don't want to change the shape of these. These are correct. These are original Ford pieces, at least for this car, and that's how they're supposed to be shaped. So if something is wrong, it's going to be the aftermarket panel, not the original piece. So let me get my camera set up, and I'm going to try to manipulate this a little bit and get it in better shape. Now I know the lighting isn't very helpful, being with a dark panel it's kind of hard to see, but I'm going to try to adjust this some. Put on my hearing protection, and I'm just going to start tapping in this location right here. Make the body line a little crisper because these are kind of round, and as I'll start test fitting the piece, still has that wobble. And the other part of that, there may be a little bit down here in this lower section because it has this what's called basically a standoff. What that is this piece touches this panel, and then the bolt pulls it up tight against. And the idea is it's to give you a distinct measurement that would be permanent from the factory. That's what that little standoff is for. And so it may be also making some contact there that's also causing a little bit of a problem. But for now I'm going to keep on working this corner a little bit. Now, I'm not moving a lot of metal, I'm just moving a little bit. That's improving it a little. Still making some contact down here at the bottom. Because really I have two pivot points. I've got one here and one down here. So I'm going to I'm going to manipulate down here a little bit too, and I can see where it's just making contact. I don't know if that's in the camera view or not. Yep. That's a little better. That's pretty close. Just a little bit more adjustment. And that's a lot better. It may take just a little bit of filler to edge that a little bit, but not much. That's a lot closer than it was, and again that deck lid will come up just a little bit and line that up. And it may still take a little bit of adjustment to get it in and out. And again, these things are never easy. The original quarters always fit perfect, or I won't say perfect, but they fit pretty close. These aftermarket ones always need some manipulation. So you can see there's a little bit I may have to do up here. I may have to come in from the inside. Oops, sorry. A little up here. I may have to come in from the inside and tap that corner out just a little bit. And I think that'll help take care of some of the excess metal. And other than that, it's fitting a lot better than it was. And I'll move along on that as well. I'm not going to put a whole lot of time on beating and banging, but things that also worked out pretty well. The brackets on the tail panel, they line up really close. And these over here as well for the bumper mounts. That's pretty close. They never get them, exactly the same because different manufacturers, have their different patterns. But for the most part, I'm happy with how all that's fitting. At this point, what I'll do, I may play around with that quarter panel just a little bit, but it'll be easier to work with when it's attached to the car. I just wanted to show you some of the technique that I'm using on trying to get that extension to fit. But the plan is I will probably pull the quarters back off, weld in this structure back here on the inside where it meets the wheelhouse, and then also the bracing that also supports the trunk hinges. And again, I'm going to salvage the piece off of the other car for the driver's side. And really that's all there is to setting those pieces, other than getting the B-pillar set in place. Now again, they have these extra length on the bottom here, and I'm not sure exactly why that's there. Doesn't make any sense to me, but I'll have to either bend it or cut it off so that I can get this B-pillar to drop down a little bit and fit in where it should, behind the quarter and on the face of this piece, and of course here. So I'll drive on and see how things turn out. Well, I've checked and double checked and rechecked and removed some of the bracing that I had inside here, and I'm ready to start welding. Now for this to happen, I'm going to have to remove the quarter panels so that I can weld that inner structure, as I've probably noted before. I did want to point out I marked where I'm going to drill my holes for the quarter panels, so that when they meet the wheelhouse. I've also laid out a pattern here on the front edge to where it'll meet the B-pillar structure, and I started laying out a pattern back here on the tail panel where it will meet the quarter. Now this will all come later because there's still some adjustment I have to do on the bottom of the quarter, or maybe both quarters, to make the fitment just right. Still a little bit more to do up here on this quarter where the extension meets, and again I've marked this side as well as the front edge of the quarter. Now this is nothing really specific, it's a little over an inch. My thumb's about an inch wide, so I'm 1.25 inches, somewhere in that range on those, and about 2 inches on the wheelhouse arch or opening. So at this point I'm going to take everything back off, set up the welder, and then get that inner structure in place. Alright, I'm pretty happy with how all that went together. My measurements, I double checked. I do a drop measurement from the top of this panel. I did it to the edge here and to this seam on both sides in the same location. Dead on the money, so I'm happy with that. Everything else seems to be working just fine. So what I'm going to do is work on the B-pillars. And as I've said before, there are two pieces to this. The main outer and the inner panel, which holds the striker mount. And one thing I noticed earlier today, I didn't really think about it too much, but if you'll notice, there's no cutout right here. There's normally a cutout for your roll-up window, and so I don't know why they don't have that pre-cut. What I did is I laid this piece on the back and lined up the holes and just traced out where that location is, and basically from there up is a slot for the window channel, or the window to go up and down. So that'll come later, but what I'm going to do now is prep this to assemble these pieces to each other, and then, as I pointed out before, on the bottom here, there's this extra tab, and I've looked at other original pieces, and I can't see where this is going to be helpful in any way. Even if it was bent, it would not be very helpful. Now, I'm not sure why they make them like that, because when you put it up against the car and you line things up, well, that just makes it sit above the rocker panel, and of course it won't fit up here where it's supposed to line up. It's too tall. So I'm just going to cut off those pieces straight and eliminate that, and then I'll also drill up some hole patterns. Drill up a hole pattern so that I can spot weld this to this piece, and same thing on the back side. I already have locations marked where I will drill holes and then spot weld these two pieces together and start doing the fitment here into the car. Alright, well, as you can see, I have the B plate or B pillar in place, and I'm just mocking it up right now. There's the holes that I just drilled in the previous segment, along with these over here. And I want to fit this in place because I needed a hole pattern to weld to this inner plate, and I know it stops short of the bottom, so I didn't want to weld all the way, have holes all the way down. And this gave me an opportunity to get that in place, and also just to test fit it. There will also be a hole up here at the top, and that's going to connect that little piece right there. I did find that there's a little bit of an overlap right here between this outer brace and then the inner structure here. So I may have to trim that off right there. And then I also did an outline of this piece because there will need to be a hole drilled on this side so that I can weld to that inner brace structure, and that keeps that from moving as well when it's all done. As you can see, I have removed the cross bracing and also the inner brace that I had here, and I cut that tab off, as I was saying earlier. So it looks like it's fitting pretty good, and at this point I'm going to take it back apart, drill the rest of those holes, trim this bracket down here, and then retest fit it. Alright, so there it is with the other holes drilled, and then I went ahead and drilled 2 holes here rather than 1, just to give it a little more strength. I know it's not going to go anywhere, but I'd rather give it just a little bit more strength right there so it can't twist. I also drilled out a series of holes here at the bottom where it will mate with the rocker panel, 1 on the top and then 4 on the side. Originally this would have had some braze in this corner. I will probably put a little bit of a weld, maybe on the back side, just to take care of that. And then the other thing is I trimmed that bracket, as I was saying, and then I trimmed this piece too, this inner brace. I'll show you on the other side. It has a bit of a radius to it in this corner, and it was conflicting with hitting this piece. So all I did was square off that corner just a little bit, and it gave room for that piece on the other side. And at this point what I'll do is I will weld together the inner and outer structure, and then I will mock everything back in place with the quarter panel and make sure everything lines up before I actually weld this in where I want it. I'm confident with where it's at, but it doesn't hurt to make sure, and so that's my plan. Well, everything fits pretty close. I'm happy with it. The one thing I will probably do is take this back apart, because there's supposed to be that box opening here for the window. And again, I don't know why they don't cut that out, when they make these. So what I did is I marked where the quarter panel is overlapping, let's say right here, and I will take this off and cut that groove. And I will use some measurements. Since I have this 66 coupe, I can use this as a reference, and there you can see what I'm talking about with that opening. So, the gasket's rather large, covers that up, but I'll still mimic this pattern, this shape, as close as I possibly can. Alright, so there it is with the cutout made, and that lined up very well. Everything else seems to be fitting just as it should. The quarter's fitting very nice. And other than that, I think I'm ready to weld it. I did apply weld through primer on the back side and all the locations that it will be welded, and that's about it. Now again, I'm not welding the quarter on yet. I'm just welding on the B pillar, and the quarter will get put on later, and there will be other things that I detail about that, but I will just be doing the B pillar at this point. Alright, so I'm very happy with how all this is coming together, and the last thing I have to do is install this support bracket, and you only find these on the convertible. They're not on the coupes, so that's just a little bit of a difference. And looking at the old B pillar, you can see it just was up against this flange, and then the bottom of it just made it to the inner rocker panel. Now, as you can see here, I've got a strap running at an angle. The reason I do that, or did that, is because this needs to come in just a little bit, and I mean just a little bit. Doing some previous cross measuring, basically from the corner down there up to this top section, it is about, well, in this case, 59 inches. And I know from the measurements I've taken before and measurements I've taken from the parts car are also 59 inches. And actually, the parts car, one side is 59 1/4, the other side is 59. So that tells you there's some variance in the original design. These things were not built on a tight specification jig anyway. So then there's just a little bit of tension on this strap. It's really just pulling just a little bit, and that's so when I weld that brace in, this is at the right angle. So I'm going to get that welded in, and that'll take care of the B pillar on the passenger side. And there's the brace welded in place, and I removed the strap and maintained the same measurement, so I'm happy with that. And with that, I think this will be the end of part 7. I don't want to make these videos way too long, but I'm trying to give as much information as I can, and my goal was to get the B pillar installed actually on both sides, which I will finish that up, get the other side in, but this is where I'm going to stop. And part of that is I'm running out of space on my camera as well. So anyway, hope you learned something. I know I did. And once again, thanks for watching.